I'm going to say the thing we spend most of our lives arranging not to think about. You are going to die. So is everyone you love. Every person you've ever met is, right now, quietly running out of time. We know this, of course, but we know it the way we know the sun will burn out. As a fact filed somewhere far away, kept at a safe distance, never quite let into the room. I know I do this. I understand death intellectually, then return to my day, as though time has quietly made an exception for me. The Stoics, however, did the opposite. They kept death close, deliberately and daily. They had a phrase for it, Memento Mori, remember that you will die. And I want to talk about it today, not because it's morbid, but because it might be the most life-giving idea that left us. Handled well, remembering death doesn't darken your life. It's the thing that finally switches the lights on. Let me start by clearing what this is not, because the idea gets hijacked constantly. You have seen the loud version. You're going to die. So hustle, grind, sleep when you're dead. Don't waste a second. Monetize everyone. Memento Mori gets belted onto the same tired machine as everything else, turned into fuel for doing more, faster, forever. I've never found that version inspiring. It feels less like living and more like being chased through your own life by a stopwatch. And I think it misses the point so completely that it becomes the thing that Stoics were warning against. Because if the knowledge that your life is short only makes you frantic, if it makes you cram more output into less time, then you haven't understood it. You've turned your one short life into a more efficient race to nowhere. Remembering death was never meant to make you hurry. It was meant to make you choose. Because here's what the awareness of death does not let it near. It burns off the trivial. It's a kind of clarifying fire. Hold your own mortality in view for even a moment, honestly, and watch what happens to the things that you are troubling you. The grudges you've been nursing. The need to win an argument. The worry about what someone thought of you at a party. The comparison, the resentment, the endless low hum of how caring about things that met against the fact that your time is infinite do not matter. I've noticed how quickly certain worries shrink whenever I ask this question. I would still care about them at the end. Most of them do not survive the question. Death doesn't make life meaningless. It does the reverse. It shows you what meaningful was all along, by making everything else fall away. Seneca wrote about this more powerfully than any. He said the problem was never that life is too short, it's that we waste most of it, and we waste it by living as though we'll live forever. We postpone, we defer, we treat our days as though they were endless, spending them on things we don't care about, promising ourselves the real living will start later, when work calms down, when the kids are grown, when we've saved enough someday. I catch myself doing this in small ways, telling myself I'll slow down later, pay more attention later, make time later. Later becomes a place where everything meaningful gets stored and nothing ever has to. Seneca's warning is brutal and kind at once. Someday is not guaranteed, and a life spent waiting for it is a life quietly spent. The person who lives as if they had forever is the one who ends up with nothing. I've had moments where mortality stopped being an abstract idea and felt close enough to change the shape of the day. For a while, everything recorded itself. Small arguments looked embarrassing. Time with people felt heavier and more valuable. Then ordinary life returned, as it always does, and the lesson began to fade. I think that this is why this reminder has to be repeated. We forget so easily. Marcus Aurelius, who as emperor was surrounded by death constantly, kept returning to it in his private journal, not with dread, but as a tool. One of his lines has stayed with me for years. He told himself, "You could leave right now, Let that determine what you do and say and think. Sit with how practical that is. Not, you will die eventually, in the abstract. This might be near the end, so let that decide how you speak to the person in front of you. Let it decide what you give your attention to and whether this small resentment deserves the space it's taking. I find that question uncomfortable, which is the part of the why it works. It exposes how often I give my best attention to things I do not value and whatever is left to people I do. Marcus used death as a filter for the present moment. Run almost everything through that filter and it sorts itself instantly. The petty things shrink and the real things stand out. So let me offer the reframe, because this is the heart of it. Memento Mori is not a whip, it's a lens. It doesn't say go faster, it says look closer at what you have while you still have it. And what is keeping pointing at almost never the stuff we panic about. It points at people, at presence, at doing your work well because it's yours to do, not because you are trying to outrun the clock. It points at that being here in the ordinary, unrepeatable moment you're currently in, instead of getting lost in a future that isn't promised or a past that's already gone. For me, this is where the idea becomes useful rather than philosophical. It changes how I enter a room, how long I stay distracted, and whether I notice the people already beside me, and that's the quiet paradox of it. Remembering death, done right, makes you less anxious, not more. Much of anxiety comes from fearing an imagined loss in a future you are treating as guaranteed. Memento Mori pulls you out of that future and back into the only place that life ever lived, now. When you register that this moment is finite and won't return, it stops being something to rush through. It becomes something to be in. The finiteness is what makes it precious. So what do you do with this? A few things. First, use the daily filter. You don't need a grand ceremony now and then when something has a gripe on you. Ask Marcus's question. If I remembered this life ends, would this still matter? Sometimes the answer is no, and the grip loosens on its own. Sometimes the answer is yes, and this does matter. That it is useful too, because now you know where to put your time. I try to use this question less of a way of dismissing problems and more as a way of measuring them properly. Some things deserve action, others deserve to be put down. Second, stop deferring the things that matter. We all carry a quiet list of some days, the call we keep meaning to make, the trip, the apology, the conversation, the thing we would do if there were time. Memento Mori says there is no guaranteed later. Not to panic you, to move on one thing off Sunday's list and into this week. One thing. That's how a life gets lived, not in an imagined future, but through small present acts. Third, and this is the one I'd hold on to the most, be present with people you love, because you don't know which ordinary moment. Most of our final times with people arrive unannounced, disguised as a normal Tuesday. You won't get a warning that is the last easy conversation or the last unremarkable dinner. The way to honour this isn't grand, it's to be there for the ordinary one. Look up, pay attention. For me, it is the small moments at home that I do not want to miss. While thinking about something less important, a conversation across the table, someone telling a story that I have already half heard, sitting in the same room without reaching for a screen. These moments do not announce their value. While they are happening, you have to give them your attention before you know which ones you will later wish you had noticed. The people in front of you are as temporary as you are. That isn't a tragedy to flinch from. It's a reason to love them properly now. And fourth, let the small things go, because death makes most of them absurd. The slight, the inconvenience, the people who annoyed you, the thing that didn't go your way. Held against the shortness of the whole thing, those lose their power to ruin an afternoon. Not because they aren't real, but because they aren't worth spending the rest of your life on. I still get annoyed by pointless things, knowing they are pointless, but this does not stop the first reaction. It helps me decide how long I am willing to carry it. Here's where it lands. We think we want more time, and of course we do. More than that, we need them to be present in the time we already have. You might have decades and sleep through them, or you might have an ordinary Tuesday and be fully gratefully alive inside for it. The Stoics kept death close not to frighten themselves, but to wake themselves up, to make the ordinary feel like what it is, rare and happening right now, only once. So Memento Mori, remember that you'll die, not as a threat, as a gift. Let it burn away what doesn't matter, and let what's left be the whole point. You don't need a longer life nearly as much as you need to be here for this one. If this reminded you of something worth being present for, go and be present for it. There's more here every week on Living Quietly